to our next stream here shortly. And so tonight we are going to talk about nutrition for injury prevention and recovery. And I was saying, some of you were on and heard me say this, but it's sometimes an overlooked topic in nutrition, but it's obviously one of the most important, right? So if you're not playing your sport, then you're not doing the thing that you want to do. And we're always thinking about building up our bodies, but it's really also about how do we keep ourselves as healthy as possible. And then if something does happen, how do we recover? How do we use nutrition to help in that process? Obviously, there's a lot of things that help with recovery, including PT and all of those things, but we're going to focus obviously on nutrition tonight. And so you guys have seen this slide probably before. So Jenna and I are the co-founders of A4 Health, and we've been so grateful to have the opportunity to work with Shattuck over these last couple of years, and we love doing programming that fits you guys. So we both do different things. Jenna is still working with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are obviously doing well this year and moving on in the playoffs. Our other teams, not so much, but we're already thinking about what next year will look like with the Wild and the Sharks. All right, so what are we going to talk about tonight? How can you prevent, or how can nutrition prevent an injury? Well, a few things we're going to talk about. I mean, what are the common sports injuries? There are more than this, but we often in sports talk about our soft tissue injuries, whether it's muscles, tendons, ligaments, and depending on whether they're ripped, torn, or just sore, we're going to employ different nutrition things around that. And bone health, especially you guys are all youth athletes, meaning that you're still growing bone. So it's super important to focus on that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. What does that look like? Using food and or supplements if needed to. And then concussion. So concussion protocols, there are many as it pertains to sort of the physical nature, but what can we use in nutrition to sort of help with concussion optimization and getting you back in the game, definitely. So, how can it prevent an injury? Well, we can optimize muscle tissue repair. Obviously, we know that protein is one of those key factors, but we'll talk about some other. Prevent prolonged muscle soreness. So what does that look like, right? So if we're chronically having muscle soreness, like I do right now, I'm training for a lot of running events. So I'm running a lot. And because I'm running a lot, my muscles are sore. But what are some things that I can do to speed that up? You can't always get rid of muscle soreness. And that's a great litmus test that you're working hard. And so it is a good thing to have sore muscles, but maybe not super sore muscles for prolonged time. And then obviously we want to support your body's total energy need for optimal growth because many of you are still growing. So if you're not growing even in height, which many of you are doing, you're still growing in muscle and your muscle potential, your bone potential. And so we have to make sure we've got enough energy to support not only what you're doing physically out there, but also your growth. And when that doesn't happen, you are only limiting yourself. So if you don't meet your fueling needs, you're limiting your growth potential too. And that's usually not what you want to do for sport. You really want to optimize growth and strength. And then a strong immune system too. So how do you prevent injury? When you are sick, you're obviously more prone to injury, right? You're not feeling as good, you're not moving as fast, you're not thinking as fast. And then nutrition can reduce muscular fatigue and really poor performance mechanics too, because you're fueled correctly. So we'll first obviously talk about injury prevention. I love this slide. It really kind of sets the stage for what should you focus on. So preventing injury. I mean, things happen. We're all watching sports and we see things that are just weird incidences, freak things, and just the nature of sports. So injury is going to happen, but how do we actually minimize it, right? We need to meet daily macronutrient needs. So we need to eat our carbs, our protein, and our healthy fats to reduce injury. We need to prioritize recovery. And this is something that I love. My running coach always tells me, make easy days easy and hard days hard. So when you have an easy day, so you're not doing, a double practice or a game or anything like that, let your body rest because rest is key for injury prevention. And make sure when you are resting that it's not just sitting around, eating junky food that's going to cause inflammation because that doesn't help with the recovery. And then optimize hydration. It's a key thing because muscles are, a majority of what muscle tissue is water. And so how to get those muscles to perform their best is by being properly hydrated. And then sleep. So prioritizing sleep. When you look at the graphic on here too, you know, we're going to go back to this, but I like to reinforce this over and over again. Nutrition recommendations when you are injured to minimize muscle loss, because it's the biggest thing that I hear from my athletes, especially my hockey players. The second they get injured, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose muscle, even though I'm not able to be as physically active as I just was, right? Whether it's they are going through PT or they've had surgery, they're not obviously going to be as active. They're on a reduced energy, output. But the first and foremost is you need to avoid nutrient deficiencies. So a lot of times some athletes will cut back really severely on their food intake. And we don't want the athletes to overeat and maybe eat at the same level that they were eating when they were playing their sport. But we certainly don't want a very strict and reduced nutrient intake, because those are the nutrients, the exact nutrients that we need to help in recovery. You need to maintain energy balance, and we work on that a little bit, figuring out sort of where their baseline is for calorie needs. And this is actually something that I tell athletes. This is kind of like if you ever have an off season or a lower, practice season. When you're injured, it's almost like getting your diet back to where you were there. So and you typically won't be as hungry. It's hard to change a mindset from what you are used to eating, but to try to just be a little more aware of hunger cues and things like that. But we're definitely not promoting at all that you restrict food so much that you're at a calorie deficit, because you're going to lose muscle mass as well. And you're not going to have the nutrients that help your body recover. We do try to get our athletes to maintain a higher protein intake. So you're going to want to focus on that. So figure out your body weight in kilograms. And this is a really challenging thing to do, but one of the best things that you can do for both injury prevention, but mostly injury recovery, is to aim for a higher protein intake. And especially when injured, looking between 2 and 2.5 grams of protein a day per kilogram of body weight. And then I'd also say, so number 5 on that infographic is that there's evidence for the efficacy or the good use of some nutraceuticals, and omega-3 fatty acids are one that I definitely do recommend, especially if you are already injured. But in general, omega-3s can also help decrease inflammation that happens whether you're injured or not. So it could help with injury prevention too. So we talk in all the talks that we've had with you guys, we talk about all the different macronutrients, but how it relates to decreasing injury is, we do know from a ton of research that I will not throw at you right now, but that low energy intake, so underfueling athletes, are at higher risk for injury. We see it over and over again. And some of it has to do literally with just being slower, not being as quick in some of those things that you need to do, cognitive function. So being able to be a very quick thinking athlete will also help reduce your risk for injury, because you get out of the way or you make smarter moves. And we know that underfueled athletes will tend to lose some of their good form. And once you lose good form, that can put you at higher risk for injury. So what does it do? It obviously, carbohydrates are our working muscles' favorite fuel source. So it helps fuel our muscles. Poor intake can lead to muscle fatigue during performance. And then chronic muscle fatigue may lead to overuse injuries. So we've talked about the good sources of carbohydrates. They really are your fruits, your vegetables, and also being careful about what grains work for you. So being really cognizant of what is working for you and what doesn't. But when you are trying to avoid injury, you certainly don't want to restrict. An underfueled athlete is an underperforming athlete, and then one that's at higher risk for injury. And we know that protein is really important. I'll talk about it with recovery too, but as it pertains to injury prevention, it obviously rebuilds and restores muscle tissue after training. So if you don't put attention to protein after training, you're at higher risk for injury, because that muscle is not getting repaired and restored properly. So it's weaker when you go into your next activity, the next day of practicing and training. It prevents prolonged muscle damage between back-to-back games and practices. And poor protein intake will equal increased muscle breakdown. Again, the opposite thing that you want when you're trying to fuel your sport. And so all protein, as most of you know, is made of these building blocks that are called amino acids. There's one that's amino acid leucine that actually stimulates muscle building. Uh, I don't often recommend that you take leucine in isolation, but if you have chronically sore muscles or it's towards the end of a season and you're just starting to feel wear and tear, leucine can be, it's just an amino acid, so it's just a protein. It's not like it's something weird. That would absolutely be something that you could add. They have it in powder form. You could add it in a smoothie, or they have it in pill form too. So I don't recommend leucine all the time, but it is a really good recovery amino acid, just because it helps stimulate muscle building. And so you could prioritize leucine-rich foods as well, which we got the little pictures on the side there, the chicken, the meat, the eggs. Those are all really high in leucine. And so when you're trying to prevent injury, I mean, we've talked about these ranges again. I would say, go for the higher thing. You guys are working real hard. I would say a 1.8 or 1.7, even to 1.8 grams per kilogram per day. If you don't like protein that much or it's hard to get it in, really try to aim for at least 1.4 grams per kilogram per day, which is hard, but you need more per kilogram of body weight when injured or recovering. And we all know most of the good sources of protein there is beef, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, supplemental, so protein shakes or powder, and then obviously tofu, edamame, and legumes and lentils from the plant-based sources. So fat, we don't often talk about that or think about what it is. I will say the omega-3s is what I'll highlight here. I think getting natural fats, whether it's from avocados, nuts, seeds, all of that, very, very healthy. The good fats, the omega-3 fatty acids, can be really amazing at decreasing inflammation. So I do recommend it. If you have a fish allergy, obviously don't take the omega-3s that come from fish oil. There are plant-based sources. The best sources of omega-3s, so the most bioavailable, are from fish and from that animal source, but you can do it through flaxseed oil and algae oil, which also has omega-3s in it. And to be honest, we don't get enough of those in our diet. So taking them as a supplement, whether there's like omega-3 oils that you could just add into a smoothie, or some of my athletes will mix it into their oatmeal or their applesauce or things like that. That's one way to do it, or you could take omega-3 pills as well. And then color, we talk about antioxidants a lot too. Why do we eat our fruits and vegetables? Like, what's the point? What's going on here? Well, when we are doing our activity day after day, we are getting a lot of oxidative stress in our body, a lot of inflammation, which can lead to muscle soreness and tissue damage. So we want to eat foods that are full of these antioxidant nutrients, these phytonutrients, and they're mostly found in plant foods that inhibit that oxidative stress and neutralize that free radical damage that's caused from training and injury. So, chronic muscle soreness may increase your risk for injury. And so getting ahead of it, right? So having foods such as tart cherries, berries, leafy greens, citrus fruits, sweet potatoes are amazing. Tomatoes, nuts, even dark chocolate, all those things can really help. But those are the nutrients that you're looking for. Even tomatoes are a great source, of lycopene, polyphenols. Dark grapes are amazing because they've got them there. Blueberries, phenomenal on antioxidant power. So that's a reason to believe on it. And sometimes that's why athletes get stuck doing smoothies a lot, because it's a great way to power pack some of those antioxidant nutrients. Which I guess brings me into talking about hydration a little bit. Again, we've talked about how the majority of muscle tissue is made up of water. And to avoid injury, you need your muscles working at an optimal level, right? And also, along with proper hydration, is electrolytes. So sodium, potassium, chloride, and magnesium to a certain extent, which we could talk more about as well. But these electrolytes also help balance and control muscle contraction. So a key factor, and I could really blind you with a bunch of research too, but we do know that even like a small amount, like a 2% fluid loss during performance can increase injury risk. So poor muscle contractility, so your muscle strains and tears and things like that become more often and more severe the more dehydrated that you are. So the goal really is to support hydration during performance and absolutely make sure that you replenish loss of fluid after performance. And sometimes the body's really good at triggering you to want to be hydrated after. Sometimes maybe it's a little harder during your activity. But I do know that I personally feel, so I'm an endurance runner, and I personally know that if I don't keep up with my hydration, first of all, my performance sucks more. And second of all, I'm more sore the next day. It's just bar none. I mean, I've done it several times where I've been properly hydrated and where I haven't, and I can definitely see the difference. Now, if you look at those recommendations that are off on the side there, again, those are real general guidelines. I would say for most of you, an extra 16 to 20 ounces per hour of training could be more. If it's a really hot day, if you're wearing a lot of equipment and you're sweating a lot, we can be anywhere up to 36 to 48 ounces per hour of training, depending on how hot it is. So play with it a little bit. I love talking about hydration. And we always show this slide here, which is the P test, right? So when you're going to the bathroom, you really want to have it in that light yellow category. The one little caveat that I have on here is that, vitamins can affect the color of your urine. So it can make your urine appear darker. That's not really a reflection of your hydration status. So especially if you're taking like B vitamins, which I take B vitamins a lot, can definitely make my urine look darker. So you're going to want to maybe not take those B vitamins on the day that you're kind of testing your hydration status or seeing where you are at. That's the easiest way to do it. Once you're thirsty, you're already kind of at a level of dehydration. So thirst is not a good indicator of hydration status. And then decreasing injury is sleep. I mean, it is almost the number one factor. This is the body's time to rest and recover. Poor sleep equals poor recovery. It's really the ability to regenerate for the next day. So poor sleep results in faster time to exhaustion and performance, reduced speed, strength, and power, and then poor mental focus impacts reaction time and accuracy. So I know that this is hard, and I know that you guys are getting towards the end of your term, but it's something to either think about today as like, what could I do to improve my sleep hygiene or my prioritizing around sleep? Or what can it look like going into the next, into summer? How can I practice that and into the next school year? So athletes who sleep less than 8 hours a night are 1.7 times more likely to become injured compared to athletes who sleep 8 hours or more a night. And I know that that can be a hard thing to do, but I really wish that I would have prioritized it more in my youth. It was something that I didn't, and I think it really did impact my performance. I can see it now that I've seen the light and understand it, but hopefully you can do that sooner than later. Obviously, avoiding late day caffeine, sugar, heavy meals prior to bed will help with your sleep. And some people really benefit. This is a good general recommendation is magnesium glycinate, 200 to 300 milligrams daily, but take it at night. So once you take it, it can really help relax you, and it can do a better job in most cases than even melatonin. And your body needs magnesium anyway. So it's a good thing to try out. Don't try it out when you have a big event the next morning, like if you have an early morning game or something like that. Some people can feel a little groggy after doing it. So try it on a day that the next morning isn't like super important. So I use this slide when we talked about sleep, but it's a good reminder. So these are the foods to improve sleep, things that you can add into your diet that can help soothe you. Any warm, non-caffeinated beverage will be also soothing as well. So heat can feel really good and relaxing. Make sure if you are having tea, it doesn't have to be chamomile, but it certainly can be a herbal tea. So something that doesn't have caffeine in it. And tart cherry juice is so good for putting in recovery smoothies. Which brings us to nutrition focus for injury recovery. So let's say it happens. We're injured. What do we do next? Well, again, we go back to prioritizing macronutrients during recovery. We don't want to restrict our nutrition so much that we're not giving our body the nutrients it needs to actually heal. So the emphasis is on high protein, so 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is a lot and it's hard to achieve. And I always tell my athletes that are injured, like, this is actually going to be the hardest thing for you because you really have to button up your diet. You really have to get into eating nutrient dense foods. It's not about food restriction, but it's certainly not about opening up the package of Cheetos and going to town, because you really have to maximize nutrition in somewhat less calories. So the other important thing is managing inflammation. So obviously you're injured, so there's a stress response that's going on. And the thing that we want to do is avoid processed foods. And I also tell people to check for food sensitivity. So if you have a food sensitivity, if you think, oh, every time I eat gluten or I eat dairy, I feel more inflamed or I feel less good, then as you're in that recovery phase, you may want to really avoid those foods because it's working against your body. And then we'll talk about the focus on injury specific nutrients in just a moment. And the goal is obviously to improve return to playtime. So it's about making sure we have enough calories that supports your goals, but also not too many calories that you're not in a good condition to come in and start playing and practicing again. So macronutrients, what do? We're injured. All right. Well, we do need that fuel for injury repair. It helps spare protein for energy use. So the goal during recovery is about 3 to 5 grams per kilogram per day. And that depends on how much activity you're getting to, because sometimes when you're injured, you actually get to do a lot more activity than others. Like lower body injuries are tougher than upper body injuries. You can usually do biking and things like that if you've got an upper body injury, but harder to do cardio if you've got a lower body injury. Protein, repair, repair, repair. We absolutely need this. We need to rebuild the damaged muscle, and it helps limit muscle loss during limited activity or mobility. So a goal again is between 2 and 2.5 grams per kilogram per day. And then with that, I mean, I have a goal listed there. It's a good to maybe keep in check on how much you're getting in a day. But if you're prioritizing omega-3 rich foods like fatty fish, nuts, seeds, um, avocados, things like that, I'm not too concerned as long as it's not, having a lot of like fried foods and things like that. So then injury specific nutrient considerations. So these are the very specific nutrients that you should add in if you are injured. So vitamin C and collagen work really, really well together. So vitamin C helps with tissue repair, helps with collagen absorption and immune building. And so collagen is a protein. And so those two work together to like rebuild tissues and immune cells and things like that, and connective tissues specifically. So collagen peptides, 15 to 20 grams of that with 50 milligrams of vitamin C. That's a good place to start. I would say you could have even more than that, 2 to 3 servings in that realm, maybe spread it out throughout the day. The rule is, structural protein for soft tissue repair, and it really is best absorbed with a source of vitamin C. You could put a scoop of that in some orange juice. That would be good. You could also put it in a smoothie, or you could just take vitamin C and add collagen to other things that you'd like. And then when we look at concussions, we're going to then really focus on omega-3 rich foods. Sorry, got a little cough today. Because omega-3 rich foods reduce that inflammation again, and also creatine. So creatine is something that can really help with concussions. A lot of research around that. And so, 3 to 5 grams a day, along with omega-3s and antioxidant rich foods. I think that combo, especially in concussion protocols, we really want to focus on nutrient densities because there is a lot of inflammation that's going on. I would also say that magnesium, that could be something as well to help with sleep, because sleep patterns get a little messed up during concussion recovery. So that could be something that could be taken in the evening. And then injury-specific nutrient considerations for bone injuries. So we probably all know that calcium is important, but so is vitamin D. So you really do want to up that intake. And really, most foods cannot offer a high dose. So this is really when supplements are necessary. We have it in our daily pack of supplements for our hockey players, just because they're inside a lot, and they're obviously their bones and their joints and everything is getting pushed on all day long. So, but it can also reduce the inflammatory response as well, and it's really essential for calcium absorption. So while we know that calcium is important for bone injuries, so is vitamin D. And then I would go back to collagen is also important for bone injuries too, for that connective tissue. So I'm putting sorry, this one little slide is a little fuzzy when it's big, but I'm a huge fan of bone broth. Some of my athletes get a little snarky at me when I put it on their protocol when they are recovering or injured, but it's beautiful. So there's lots of different brands out there that you could try. I put those boxes on the top of Dr. Kellyanne. It's kind of a funny name, but it comes in packets, so you can order it like on Amazon, and you can just make a packet of bone broth, which is hydrating. It also has electrolytes, but it also has the collagen in there. So it's just a really highly absorbable way to help with recovery. It's like a soothing combination of nutrients for your body, and you can see all the benefits there. But as it pertains to injury, it impacts joint health quite a bit. It maintains the healthy gut barrier. And so for injury and recovery, we want to make sure that we have a healthy gut. You might be taking medicine and things like that, like antibiotics that are going to be messing up your gut. So we really need to try to keep that gut as healthy as possible. So collagen, and then bone broth that has collagen in it, and maybe along with a probiotic, all of those can help with gut health. And it also helps with supports bone formation. So these are kind of my favorites when we're talking about recovery. And I really try to encourage my athletes to have at least 2 servings of bone broth a day when they are on the recovery train. So, but they're good for everybody. I had a big long race this weekend. It was like a relay race. So I was up in the middle of the night a lot, and my gut was starting to feel weird, and I was starting to feel tired, and I just made myself a cup of bone broth and got me right back in it. So highly recommend it. You can find some different flavors out there. So as always, here's my contact information. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second so that I can hear and see all of your comments or your questions, but feel free to snap a shot of that if you'd like. And all right, I'm going to stop that and open up the chat. So there's nothing